make sure that that program doesn't contain controversial subjects, and you're not impolite to people.
No, definitely not, Dad. You know me. I'm never, ever controversial or impolite.
Yeah. Okay.
Welcome to Conversations with your lovable, never pisses anyone off, never been banned from Facebook or YouTube, never been sabotaged or censored for politely expressing a difference of opinion, ex-Muslim host Aina, keeping it non-controversial. Welcome to Polite Conversations, episode 15. I've got Michael Sherlock with me today, speaking all the way from Japan. Thank you so much for taking the time out to be here, Michael.
Thank you, Aina, for having me on.
Thank you for pronouncing that correctly.
I'm guessing you're Pakistani, right? Pakistani Canadian?
Yes.
Yeah, I have Pakistani friends in Australia as well, but you're the first Aina I've met, so cool.
Yeah, because it's not really a name, it's a word.
What does it mean?
Mirror.
Is it Urdu?
Yes, it is Urdu.
Mirror.
Yeah.
Wow, that's deep.
So how's it going?
It's going good.
How's that side of the world? How's the future?
It's it's all grim.
Oh dear.
No, it's actually it's cooling down a little bit. It's still quite warm here in Japan, but it's slowly cooling down, and North Korea hasn't evaporated us yet, so that's good.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I always find you to be such a refreshing voice on Twitter because it just seems to be harder and harder now to find like left-leaning atheists. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, I find a lot of pseudo-left-leaning atheists, and by pseudo I mean either right-wing atheists who call themselves left or ultra-left-leaning atheists who have just gone round to the right from the other side. I mean, they're so left that they've gone right round to the right.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to find people who, I think, just balance their opinions and balance the information they receive. I think it's very difficult. But the fact that you class me in that group, I really sincerely appreciate that.
No, like you're absolutely like a rare voice of sanity. I think you're a bit more left than me, so we don't always agree on everything, but
What? That's an atrocity. How can two minds not agree on absolutely everything?
I know, and then still talk to each other in a civil manner?
We're supposed to, if you disagree with one of my opinions, I hate all of you.
Absolutely.
Every other opinion, even if they line up with mine, I just can't stand people that have one different opinion. It bugs me.
You sound like so many people on Twitter.
Well, it's because I'm omniscient, you see. And so if you disagree with me, you're obviously wrong. It can't be me.
Obviously, right? You're never wrong.
No, that's right.
So, I wanted to ask you about, you've been doing some interesting trolling lately, I guess, on Twitter. When you tweet about things like white privilege, you upset a lot of people. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a combination of factors, I think. When I tweet about white privilege, I'm doing so from a perspective of someone who studied it in sociology. And I do concede that within sociology there is what I would call a regressive left, a pervasive regressive leftist kind of movement. But to dismiss the data and the qualitative research on white privilege, I think, is out of hand without even investigating it, I think is the definition of willful ignorance. Why does it upset people? I think because there are some activists on the left who make claims such as all white people are racists and white supremacy is everywhere, and I think they make these absurd claims. And
I've been called a white supremacist more times than I even remember, actually, just for being a critic of Islam.
I think that would be a great Twitter handle, the Pakistani white supremacist.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think part of it is a reaction to that kind of activism. I think it depends on so many factors. It depends on the country that the person is coming from, who's reacting to it. It depends on the group they belong to within that society. It depends on their own individual psychology. It could be a manifestation of irrational guilt. Some white people react to the existence of this fact with a deep sense of guilt, and that can manifest in a variety of ways depending on the person's psychology, I think. So it can manifest in a way that you become more sympathetic to the fact that white privilege exists in white majority countries, or it can manifest in a kind of almost a childish-like rebellion against the concept itself. And so I think it depends on the individual psyche, to be honest. Largely anyway, yeah. But there's also this regressivist, anti-regressive left movement.
Which has become pretty regressive in itself, don't you think?
It has. It employs the same kind of, I guess, heuristic thinking, or I say thinking in quote marks, but it employs the same kind of unthinking that the regressive left employ, but it's in reaction to the regressive left.
Right, but they're just mirroring the tribalism, the identity politics.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as human beings, it's very hard to escape tribalism. We can do it, and a lot of people do it, but it is very difficult because we are social animals. We do seek to identify and find mirrors of ourselves in others and groups. So I think it is very difficult to escape, but yeah, I've noticed that. So why do people object to it? I think there's a number of various, social and psychological reasons why people object to the concept. And it's not just white people who object to the concept either.
Yeah, I've seen all types.
Yeah, so it can be seen, particularly if you don't understand it.
Well, what bothers me is this all or nothing attitude. Either it's like people who are shrieking about it being everywhere in everything, or there's people being defensive and saying, like, it doesn't exist. Yeah. And why can't we, too often we just can't find that reasonable middle ground on things. Either racism is everywhere or racism is nowhere. White privilege is everywhere or white privilege is nowhere. You know?
Exactly. Yep, and that's a huge problem. This polarization that's going on, it just leads to such ill-contrived conclusions with regards to such, matters.
I find it interesting, even though, I guess I don't actively tweet about some of these things, like white privilege or BLM. I find it interesting to watch the responses to you kind of triggering, to borrow a word from the, I guess, first the regressives and then the anti-regressives. Yeah. But triggering has been appropriated by all sorts too, hasn't it?
It has.
It's amusing to watch you triggering certain types of people.
Yeah, and I think I enjoy doing that. When I find if I tweet something that gets a really hostile and angry reaction, I tend to just hammer on that point for a little while just to get people really worked up. Because I just don't see the sense in it, to be honest. I don't know. So
you're interested in social justice, right? Not in the social justice warrior sense, but in equality and race issues and sexism issues. And I think you identify as a feminist.
Yes.
These are just becoming rarer and rarer things to see in the online atheist community. And it's just, I don't know how to say this without pissing off a lot of people, but it's just nice to see that some of that still exists, Some good old-fashioned concern about racism, sexism, some left-leaning values.
Well, I think that a lot of the atheists who are so anti, discussing issues with regards to, say, racial inequality and gender inequality and these issues, they're so concerned with the minority rights in the Muslim world. But when it comes to the West, they just don't want to talk about it, or they want to ignore that there is any kind of, inequality at all.
Yeah.
And I think it's an inconsistency in principles. I mean, why are you so concerned with minority rights in the Muslim world if you're not with minority rights in the West?
Right.
And my whole thing is I like to employ my principles consistently. So I advocate for minority rights in the Muslim world. I advocate for minority rights in the West. Anywhere minorities are oppressed, anywhere that the society itself is harder for some, I want to be there and say, look, well, you have my support. And that's very hard to do, as you said, right now within the atheist community in the West. There's a very adverse reaction to it. But then if I tweet something about, say, minorities in the Muslim world,
you get like 10,000 retweets in a second, right?
Everyone's like, yeah. And like I get genuine support from Muslims in the Muslim world, from secularist Muslims and from ex-Muslims, particularly in the Muslim world and who are from the Muslim world. And I expect, I understand that, I understand that because, well, they've suffered it. But okay, why are you supporting, as a Westerner, why are you supporting minority rights in the Muslim world and you can't even see the problems in your own backyard? I think, I don't know, it's an inconsistency.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, every time I try to tweet about, like, I live in the West, so I see it here. I see sexism here in my everyday life. Obviously, I don't see sexism in, like, oh, if some dude is wearing a pinup girl on his shirt or whatever, like, that's ridiculous, but... there obviously not everything has to be Sharia level bad. This is the argument I get all the time. If I tweet about something or write something about daring to criticize something in the West, it's always like, well, what about Islam or even just another religion? If I criticize Christianity or Hinduism, it's like, well, what about jihadis? Yeah, okay, but not everything has to be that bad in order for us to be able to criticize it. Like, if that's how low our bar is, then we're not going to be able to better ourselves from anything then. If we're just like, oh, well, what about people blow themselves up? Well, what about ISIS? Well, okay, nothing's that bad here.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a doctor who specializes in, say, the flu, and another doctor comes up and says, well, what about cancer? It's like, yeah, okay, cancer's really bad, I agree, but can we also treat the flu? Is that all right? So just because the degree may be severer in some instances and in some senses doesn't mean we can't also address perhaps what you might call, I know, quote-unquote, lesser problems or problems with less severe consequences, and in some cases equally severe. But yeah, I totally agree with your point.
I mean, there's the whole crowd that says feminism isn't needed in the West, and I couldn't disagree more with that.
No, it's still necessary. It's still needed. I tend to piss off the tribes that take me in a lot because I don't follow the party line perfectly.
You absolutely don't, which is why I find you really interesting.
Like, for example, I support the cause of Black Lives Matter, but I'm also of the mind that the people who have been using Black Lives Matter, some of the people who have been using that have been making some gross mistakes.
Absolutely.
Saying that as a white guy is very controversial. I mean, how dare you? And I've gotten it, pretty angry responses. But I think, like, for example, and here I'm not supporting Milo. I think he's a child who has extremely endearing charisma. I really like his charisma. He's very charismatic. He's very funny, but he's a child. He has a childlike outlook on the world, and he's an idiot.
He's an idiot. But don't you think that downplays his harmfulness a bit? I mean, he's defended his pedophile priest before on air.
Yeah. He definitely. He's an absolute menace. But I like to take people's personalities apart and I say, well, I like his charisma, but that doesn't kind of trick me into liking everything he does. Or if he makes a good point about something, I can separate that out from the rubbish that he says because I'm going to analyze it on my own. I'm not going to get caught up in a charisma frenzy. Yeah,
well, I can totally agree that he's charismatic. That's the only way he'd have such a large following, right?
Yeah, but I mean, he's a Trump supporter, let's be honest.
His views are horrendous, beyond. I don't even know if he believes them.
Sometimes, like, you see him smirking when he's saying things, like, it's like he knows he's going to get a reaction for it, or is he just baiting people to bait people? But I think he is truly I think he's toxic.
So now, how is that different from you? Like, I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but you just said that you like to do that sometimes, right? Like tweet about things that are getting a rise out of people.
Yeah, well, as long as they're not going to disenfranchise people. Mm-hmm. But I think his rhetoric and combined with his charisma, I mean, his stance against Black Lives Matter, and this is where I was going to make the initial point, where I think that the Black Lives Matter movement has made some mistakes when they interrupted his speech at one of the universities, or his talk at one of the universities, blowing a whistle and dancing around. And as a non-American, because I see that as a very kind of American kind of behaviour, and I know that's bigoted, I'm so sorry, perhaps that's one of my weak spots, and I'll work on that. But I see that kind of dancing around and blowing a whistle to interrupt someone instead of engaging them intellectually. I see that as very, American. I think it's the only word I can put to it. But I thought that was a huge mistake when they interrupted his speech.
Michael Sherlock, Americanophobe. That's what we're going to get for this.
No, but there's tons of highly intelligent Americans. I mean, of course, I'm not generalizing all Americans, but you see this kind of, this, I don't know, it's like a pop or movie kind of culture. I don't know what it is anyway. But it's just strange.
Sorry to interrupt. Is there hammering going on where you are?
There is. The neighbours are building a house.
Oh, okay. Strange. I can actually hear that.
They've just started now.
Oh, of course. Anyways, continue. We'll power through this.
Yeah, sorry. So when they Black Lives Matter interrupted Milo's speech, I thought that was a mistake. And I think they've made numerous mistakes. And some of the people that have been spearheads of the movement, I believe one of the women said something like, I just pray to Allah to come and kill all these white people.
Oh, yes, that was in Toronto. That was a Canadian BLM person.
Yes.
That was just horrible. I mean...
what a stupid thing to say. And I mean...
way to discredit your own cause, right? What
exactly.
is the point?
And you just fuel the people that are already against the cause to start with from the get-go. You give them ammunition.
Absolutely. And just what they did in Toronto Pride, I don't know if you heard about that. They stopped the Pride Parade here.
Yeah, that was stupid, I think, in my opinion.
Very stupid, because,
imagine the message. This is what I was talking with my wife about it, and I said, just imagine the message if the Black Lives Matter protesters had have shown up and walked hand in hand with the LGBT community. What a powerful message that would have been.
Yeah, I think that could win people more allies, right? To rain on somebody else's parade like that is... I get it. You're a minority, they're a minority. Why stomp on their celebration of their rights? Several people have tried to explain to me, people who think that this was an okay tactic, but I just don't get it.
Yeah, exactly. It was a very stupid strategic error, I think, on the part of Black Lives Matter to do that. They won themselves no friends by doing that.
It's just not the right time and place, when another minority is trying to celebrate the rights they've won after going through such a struggle. I just feel like one minority kind of shitting on another minority. You should know better as a minority, right? How it feels.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And this is going to sound insensitive coming from a white person, but to pretend that racial inequality is the only form of inequality, or that ethnic minorities are the only ones who receive injustice or are subject to injustice, is, I think, a little narcissistic. And I know that's going to piss a lot of the people that like me because I've supported Black Lives Matter, but I'm sorry that the LGBTQ community, and I hate saying it sounds like a sandwich. Anyway, the gay community have their own plights. They certainly have been discriminated against and have been, it's just, they've had a horrible time within their own families as well, which adds another dimension to it, because it's not like you're born into a gay family, generally speaking. You have those struggles as well. So I think to do that was extremely stupid and insensitive, and it defeats the purpose of supporting minority rights. I think it just flies in the face of that.
Absolutely. And it's very much like, well, what about us and what about our struggle? Like, of course that struggle is important, but do you really need to stop somebody else from their thing to highlight your struggle? It's just, I get what you mean about narcissistic, and yes, I mean there will be people pissed off at that, but it doesn't have to be blanket support or blanket hate. Again, like, I don't understand that extreme polarization. There's people who just don't understand that there's a real grievance involved in why BLM has started. Like, I totally understand that there is a real issue, but there's people who don't want to admit, or they want to downplay that there is a problem, right?
Yeah. And
on the other hand, then there's those people who will turn everything into a race-related issue. So it's very hard to find that reasonable middle ground again.
Yeah, it's like I say to my wife, and she usually objects to this statement because she's a very optimistic person. She has faith in humanity. I think we as a species overrate ourselves extremely. And I'm a people person individually, but I just don't like groups too much, and cultures and like massive groups. I find groups to be overrated and horrible, generally speaking. Even atheists, I don't.
Blasphemy.
Yeah, I know, right? So I don't know. Yeah, I like people on an individual basis, but I don't like human beings that much.
I can relate to that totally. I mean, yeah.
human beings and cats.
I like cats, but I have allergies, unfortunately. I love cats.
I'm a dog person.
Oh my gosh, Michael. Well, now we can't be friends. Well, no, I like dogs too, but I'm allergic to them too. But how dare you? How dare you insult cats on my podcast?
That's right. I will.
Fine. I mean, I've had people on that have called my family genocide supporters and stuff, and I've been pleasant to them. Well, you need to listen to some episodes. You should listen to the Tariq Fatah episode. It's a good one.
I listened to the Maryam Namazie one because I, as you probably know, I'm friends with Maryam. I really have a deep respect for Maryam and her work. And I was lucky enough to meet her in Estonia, and we both gave a talk at the Rationalist International Conference. And she's just so lovely. So, yeah, I'm very interested.
She's lovely, yeah. And I do appreciate that she calls out the British far right as well as the Muslim far right, which is also rare. But, she's been a controversial topic lately among atheists too, hasn't she?
And I'm sure she scratches her head over the fact that I am also friends with Tommy Robinson.
I've got so much to ask you. Continue.
Yeah, I actually like him. I know I don't agree, obviously, with all of his opinions, but as we were speaking about before, what two human beings ever agree on everything? But I have, and as I also said, I don't like human beings as groups. I assess people individually. To me, how we interact as, two human beings, and we've always had a good rapport. So,
the thing is, I had a good one I had a great chat with Tommy as well on G Spellchecker's podcast a couple of years ago when he had just left EDL he had started working with Quilliam, and I saw this great documentary about him and Mo Ansar and Majid on the BBC. I forget what it's called, but I'll try to add a link. It just seemed like he was leaving behind his kind of extremist ways, and I felt really hopeful about that. So I wanted to extend a hand in friendship, sure, he has had views in the past that I really don't approve of, and he can be very tribal and bigoted, But I felt like he's probably a guy that's had very negative experiences, and people keep pushing him into corners and people keep turning him away. Maybe if someone from the Muslim community reaches out, a hand in friendship, and says, look, we're probably concerned about the same thing, Islamism or Islamic extremism, but yet we go about it in very different ways, and how you go about it can actually be counterproductive. So we had that conversation, and he actually admitted that, yeah, it's not helpful when he groups people into like British lads versus Muslim lads. And I'm like, well, they're British too, you know?
Yep.
So he actually acknowledged that, yeah, it's probably not the best way to go about things. So I left that conversation feeling that that's great. You know, I did challenge him on his views, but he was changing. It was helpful. Since then, Tommy has regressed 100%. He's called for deporting Muslims. He's been like, you know, his account tweeted like a white genocide tweet. What is happening? Like, he hasn't gone forward. He also kind of bashed Majid and Quilliam, saying that they tried to pay him off to leave EDL and that's why he left. And he's a mess.
Yeah, but
and he's been horrible to Maryam. I don't know if you saw his sexist, body shaming tweets to her.
No, I didn't. I missed that. I would have definitely pulled him up on it if I did. But yeah, look, I grew up, I guess, to explain why I'm friends with a diverse range of people who share, or people who have different ideologies and different ways of going about things. I grew up with a father. I grew up as my father was my sole parent, and he was a spokesman for the Sydney Communist Party. And he was a spokesman for the Maritime Union Association, and we used to get death threats and all that because he'd speak out in public about the abuse of corporate power with regards to ship owners and things like that. And so, but he's very left, extremely left, was a communist. His parents were communists. My grandma went and visited and listened to Mao speak in China.
Wow.
So very communist. I got taught the People's Song at a very young age, and I'm not a communist. I don't agree with communism. I think there's benefits to socialism, but I think communism is cancer. But
I think I'd have to agree.
Which he'd strongly disagreed, obviously. But I grew up in a house where a lot of his friends were far right. I mean, not an obviously a lot were very left for communists as well, but he would have friends around who are far right, and it would just be yelling in the lounge room, like for an hour, yelling back and forth, and then all of a sudden it would go quiet and my dad would be like, you want a cup of tea? It's like, yeah, all right, thanks, Tone, and his name was Tony, and Dad would go make him a tea, and then bang, the shouting would continue, and it was a great chat, mate, see you later. And so this was the kind of, I think, environment I grew up in, where you could be friends with someone who didn't share your opinions, who your opinions were almost polar opposites.
No, I mean, I get that. I mean, but there's like a kind of like an ethical line. Like, I can be friends with lots of people that I don't share opinions with, and I had a perfectly pleasant chat with Tommy, and we, said we'd meet up for drinks if I was ever in the country, and I'd be happy to go for drinks with him even now. But if I think someone is a bigot, it's very hard for me I can be polite with them and converse with them, but to actually be friends with them, that's hard. Like, can you be friends with Anjum Chaudhry? And not that they're comparable. I know people are going to jump and be like, Tommy Robinson isn't like... I know they're not. No, he's a lot better, but, this is the same thing. We don't have to go to the lowest example.
Look, and this is going to piss a lot of my fellow anti-Muslim atheists off, and I don't say
fellow anti-Muslim atheists.
I mean fellow atheists who are anti-Muslim.
Okay.
Sorry, but if Anjum Chaudhry said, "Look, I want to discuss these issues with you. I'll buy you a drink. You want to come and have a drink?" Not that he would, but if he did, I would be, yeah, sure, mate, no worries. Let's go have a drink. Let's go chat.
That's fine, though. But can you call him a friend after knowing his views?
Look, I don't know. I mean, if that's a difficult question, because what if there are other dimensions to him that we can relate? What if he's, say, a father as well, and he has similar concerns, and that's the main or the bulk of our...
But then he's just going to come around and be like, well, I need to stick my daughter in a burqa soon, and that illusion will be quickly shattered, because I'm sure his bigotry will seep into a lot of stuff. So in that way, can you be friends with like a white genocide person?
Well, obviously, I think the white genocide people are loons, but I don't know. I don't see. As much as I say I dislike humanity or human beings, I don't see an individual as being representative of the lowest part of their character, generally speaking. I think people are complex, and minds are complex. So I don't know. It depends on my personal rapport with the person. Would I ever support something that a friend who has different views, would I ever support their views just because they're my friend? No. I have my own mind, I have my own opinions, and those opinions are subject to change when good evidence and information comes along. But
No, you're misunderstanding my question. I'm not saying that, would you support their views, but can you, let me make this example even more extreme. Not Tommy, let's say white supremacist, open KKK guy. Sure, you guys have different opinions and you recognize the problems with his opinions, but would you be able to break that down and only focus on the good parts? Oh yeah, we're both parents, we have that in common. Or is there a line that you just can't cross in being friends with a certain type of person?
I don't know. That's a really deep question, and involves so many variables that the example doesn't give me. Obviously, I can't support their ideas, and I can't support that kind of that viewpoint, and I find it disgusting. But it depends. Again, just because someone flies under a certain banner, it could be the result of misguided upbringing. It could be the result of misguided. Somewhere along the line they became delusional.
Sure, but that could be jihadis too, right?
Jihadis as well, yeah, exactly right. I don't know. It's a very complex question. I don't think I can give you a straightforward answer, to be honest. Okay,
this is how I view it. I don't see the point in befriending a white supremacist or a jihadist. If I could see that this jihadist or this white supremacist guy was on the edge of kind of letting go of his beliefs, and all he needed was some friendship in his life and maybe an alternative viewpoint, then maybe I'd definitely work on it and be look, you can get yourself out of this. There's so much better ways to think about the world. But if someone's just set in their ways, even a non-violent Islamist, what is the point in trying to befriend them? And sure, Tommy is better than all those examples I just gave, and I once did see hope for him, which is why, I said I'd be happy to go have a drink with him. I interviewed him, and we had a really nice, pleasant chat, and actually not pushing him into a corner, as I've seen a lot of times in his interviews with the British mainstream media. He actually responds better when you don't just start off calling him a racist or a this, or then he'll actually be willing to admit to his mistakes. However, all that said, Tommy's charming, and sure, he has a following. He's just gone backwards. There's been no effect of trying to reach out to him, and then people just tell me that he seems to morph into the views of whoever's interviewing him, right? So when he's interviewing someone that's against anti-Muslim bigotry, he'll definitely put on this face and say absolutely, I separate Muslims from Islam. But then the next day he'll go and say, well, all the Muslim adult males that have arrived here in the past 12 months should be deported. That's not really staying true to his words. And so then when he crosses that ethical boundary for me, I can't. I can converse with him, I can chat with him, I can drink with him, but I cannot hold out hope for him or be his friend. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I know where you're coming from. But also, I think you need to also acknowledge the fact that people's minds can be fluid, and not just fluid, but compartmentalized. That is, the mind is an extremely complex thing. And yes, people show a certain, I guess, face in certain circumstances, but that doesn't mean that they're, I don't know, what's the word? They're being disingenuous, or it might actually be an aspect of his personality.
The white genocide side?
The white genocide side, as well as as well as the non-bigoted side, as well as these might be all components of his personality that share kind of the same space inside his mind. And yes, it's confused. Yes, it's obviously contradictory. And I think I believe this. I believe that all of us are hypocrites. I believe that every single human being is a hypocrite in some aspect.
Mm-hmm. Some are less, some are more, some are like hypocrites. Exactly. Everything they say and do, but... Exactly.
I'm a hypocrite. We're all hypocrites. That's human nature. The reality is so complex that we oversimplify it to control our environments, or to feel like we can control our environments. And in that process, we take certain stands. But we're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't quite fit. And so hypocrisy is the natural result of us, I think, trying to oversimplify reality, and we end up taking stands that are contradictory in some form or another, whether it's in our personal life or whether it's in our, I guess, public life. I think all human beings are hypocrites, and I think the fact that we like to believe that we're not is a mass delusion. So I don't know. This is getting to my point that I think you can't judge a person by an aspect of their character. I think.
So then you can't judge a jihadi by an aspect of their character, like.
No, if the jihadi is a bad example, because you can certainly judge people by what they do. If they're killing someone or raping someone or doing that. But if they believe, we're talking about people with certain viewpoints, not people who...
Okay, but I mean, in regards to Tommy, he's, he's been to prison a couple of times, I think. He's been in fights. He's used I think an alias to get into the U.S. Like, I forget what the exact story was, but something like that. Didn't he use like a fake name or a fake passport? These are not legal things.
Yeah, but I don't see, for me, and I don't want to sound like I'm advocating on behalf of Tommy Robbins and all of his views, but I do like him, I confess. I don't agree with all of his views. Of course I don't. And that's quite obvious, I think.
Well, yeah, you're one of the few people that are like hardcore atheists, but also very vocal about anti-Muslim bigotry, which I really appreciate. But I don't understand where, Tommy Robinson fits in. And I say that as someone who did reach out to him in the past. Tommy Robinson of today, not Tommy Robinson of 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think also with regards to the fights he's gotten into and all that, I'm not appraised of all of the facts in those areas. Did he initiate? I've seen videos where he was attacked.
Yeah, I've seen that too, and that's horrible. And there was a recent incident where he had, a bottle hit on his head and he was in the hospital. It's terrible. I wish people would just oppose each other verbally and never physically. But
exactly. But so I'm not aware of what were the facts surrounding the fights he's gotten into, or the facts in his imprisonment, because what I have seen is him and his family with his children go into a British pub and sit down to try and have a meal and be harassed by the police for no reason, sitting there with his children having a meal with his family and be harassed by the police and then followed. So I'm not completely aware of the facts surrounding his imprisonment. But on that particular situation, I definitely supported him and retweeted him, because that's bullshit that the police can follow you around because you have a certain viewpoint and then harass you and harass you.
I agree with that. I think even he wore a t-shirt that said "fuck ISIS" or something, and then he was banned from what, like a football game?
That's right. Yeah, I remember that too. And well, fuck ISIS. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, fuck ISIS. I think I retweeted him and supported him for that too. And so I can understand what you're saying about separating these things. Again, I don't understand the friend part, but
maybe it's my definition of friend. Maybe that's it, because I find that when two people don't understand each other over an issue, quite often it's to do with semantics. It's quite often to do with the way people are using words. I don't know, maybe my internal concept of friend is different from your internal concept, and so that's maybe where we're miscommunicating.
Possible. Okay, let me just put it this way. Can you be friends with someone you think is a bigot?
Can I be friends with, in my understanding of friends?
Yes, in your understanding of friend and your understanding of bigot.
What colour are they?
Does that matter?
Yeah.
I don't know, white?
White, okay. Yes, I can.
If they're another color? Brown?
Yes, I can.
What color of bigot don't you want to befriend?
Purple.
Okay, I don't think there's any danger of you meeting purple bigots.
Yeah, so my point is that, look, people can be stupid. People hold stupid views and ignorant views. That doesn't necessarily bar me from finding something good in them, as much as I'm a pessimist. If I see redeeming qualities that I think can eventually one day, as you said, lead them out of bigotry or I don't know, soften them a little bit.
So that's when you see hope, or you don't have to see hope, you're just going to keep trying?
I think that's a good question. Yeah, maybe I see hope.
Okay, because I feel I'm the same way. If I see hope in someone, I'll happily reach out to them, whether they're a white supremacist or whatever, because I'd like to convince them to stop being that way.
Yeah, of course. And I think if more people from opposing viewpoints became friends, I think the world would be a much more peaceful place.
I just shudder when you say friend, though, because I'm trying to picture myself in a friendship with a KKK person. I can't do it. I'll reach out to them, but I just can't be their friend. I'll never call them my friend, you know?
What about this situation? What if the KKK person genuinely liked you, Aina,
but I'm
as
brown.
A human being? Yeah, but they didn't care about that. They didn't care about that. For some reason, they didn't care about it. They liked you as a person. They thought you were wonderful. They thought you were fabulous. And every time you met them, they were just so polite, so nice, so warm, generous, giving. Could you be friends with that person?
Only if I tried to use that as a doorway to show them that there can be other people of color that could possibly be okay, you know, that they could accept. If they can like me, then they can like other people of color, then I can show them that they're not really a white supremacist.
That would obviously be a factor, right? That would obviously be a certain possibility. But
that is, again, then I'm seeing hope. I guess if I can't picture myself in a situation where there's a white supremacist that really is very sweet to me and likes me a lot. That would be such a weird situation.
It's hypothetical, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, if hypothetically that were the case, I mean, wouldn't you then be like you're saying, the advocate to try and at least recapture one mind, at least, you know, save one mind from the error that is white supremacy and bigotry and all these other pollutants that...
Yes, but then our friendship would be focused on me trying to change that. It wouldn't just be like, hey, let's go, let's go for a walk or let's go swimming. No, like would have to actively work on their views. Like, almost all the time because I wouldn't be able to rest, you know?
Yeah, no, I completely understand. And if you see them behaving in a manner that is, conducive to white supremacy, then obviously you'd bring them up on it.
Yeah.
And as a friend, this is the way I use the definition of friend, you would have some influence to do that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. If you win them over, then you do have more influence, and I think that was my hope in trying to reach out to Tommy 2 years ago. And he was more receptive, but on the whole, I think he's gone backwards, not forwards. And it's even stranger, this friend thing, because what happens if two of your friends, or if one of your friends is like kind of being bigoted towards another friend? Do you remember the Vive Charlie magazine, and you stood up and said that you no longer wanted to write for them anymore?
Yeah. No, that's fine. Because, they attacked a friend of mine. And I wasn't advocating them being banned or anything like that, or censoring them. I was just saying, I don't want to be a part of that, because I consider Maryam Namazie a friend, and I like my friends, the people that I respect, and don't attack her.
Yeah, no, I thought that was really awesome of you,
I'm happy to talk about that, because she's... Okay, the guys behind Vive Charlie... I've had a good rapport with Joe in the past, and I could still have a good rapport with him in the future. I'm not sure. I won't ever write for that magazine again. But they're armchair activists, right? They don't go to events and conferences. They don't go out and try and help ex-Muslims. And
well, they were trying to host a Draw Muhammad contest, I think it was, with Paul Weston, who's also co-heading Pegida with Tommy, and is also an open white genocide YouTuber. So he's a pretty open white supremacist, I think, and this is who they're...
My point is that Maryam Namazie has done extremely important work, activist work.
Absolutely.
She's faced off against, angry Muslims who have been yelling at her in her face while she's been delivering, an extremely eloquent speech, and she stays eloquent even in the face of such adversity and such anger. She's an extremely brave woman, and I think that women like that, men like that, children like that deserve respect. And so I became quite annoyed at that situation, and I didn't want my name on that label. So I quickly separated myself from that magazine, because I respect Maryam Namazie very much. And
I don't know if you're familiar with their other content, but it's not... it's pretty dubious, some of the stuff. And I have to say that before I knew you, when I saw that you were associated with that magazine, I was like, oh my gosh, is he one of those weird, bigoted, far-right atheists? But you're absolutely the opposite of that.
Well, I am, I'm certainly not a bigot. If I were a bigot, I think my half Indian children would pick up on it pretty quickly and berate me for it. And my wife would certainly kick my ass, because she's strong. I'm not. And that's not I have black friends or I have brown friends and family, so I'm not a bigot call. It sounded a lot like that, but it wasn't that. No, but no, I'm not. I see humanity as needing to come together, but I don't deny the fact that we are not yet together. Racial inequality should not exist, but racial inequality does exist. So I think it's important to be realistic and idealistic at the same time and balance those facets. Mm-hmm. But
I think that those are some wise words. Okay, so moving on from that topic, was it CJ Whirlman that accused you of inspiring Craig Hicks?
Yep. That's him.
So the guy who murdered 3 Muslims at Chapel Hill?
Yeah.
And I guess he followed you on Facebook or something, and so CJ Whirlman took this as a reason to say that you inspired those murders?
Yeah, he was an atheist who had been a fan of many different Facebook pages, and it just so happened that on the day that CNN screenshotted his own Facebook page, a few of my posts were on his page, that he'd shared them from my Facebook page. And so CJ Whirlman took that ball and just ran with it and said, well, Michael Sherlock inspired the Chapel Hill killer, which was complete nonsense because most of the things he'd shared from my page were anti-Christian, not anti-Muslim. I'd heard in an interview or with comments he'd made on Facebook or something like that, that he said he preferred Muslims over Christians. He found Christians more annoying than Muslims. And yeah, so that he obviously didn't kill them, I think. I don't think you can attribute it to anti-Muslim bigotry. Or, I mean, you can't discount the possibility that it may have been a factor, but it doesn't look likely. It doesn't look like the likely scenario. And I think the issue more with that situation is mental health and gun control in the US. I think the US needs to invest a lot more in both of those things.
So did you ever try to resolve this with CJ or try to explain to him how ridiculous I know that's a pointless thing to do, even try to explain to CJ. But this, it must be really frustrating to be accused of something like that when you have nothing to do with it. You can't, blame the people that murderers read, or, are we going to blame Chomsky for inspiring bin Laden?
Yeah, exactly. It's absurd. And I did, after I received threats on my children, I did reach out to him and said, look at the consequences of your callous actions.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I was really angry, very, very angry, as you can imagine. And I did. But again, it was a month after I reached out to him and said, look, stop it, you're being stupid. He did it again. He retweeted that. And so I was just like, I don't know. And then recently, Talib Kweli, the rapper.
So many people that I follow have been giving this guy so much attention. I don't even know who he is, but he's just always on my timeline. Why? Just leave him alone. Ignore him.
Yeah, no, but he jumped on that as well and said, you're the guy who inspired the Chapel Hill killer and all this shit to millions of his followers plus, and all this nonsense. It's just, see, this is why I don't like human beings.
I get it.
Yeah,
okay, being friends with CJ, how about that one?
Yeah, I could.
Yeah?
Yeah, I could. Honestly, I'm speaking honestly, I could. I find him misguided. I find his views half-baked and ridiculous and even poisonous. But yeah, I think I could.
After what he said about you inspiring murders.
Even after what he said, yeah, I could. I could forgive him. If he was sincere in his apology and he made amends in some manner, yeah, I could. I don't hold grudges. I'm not very good at holding grudges. I could be friends with Talib as well. These are people that have, attacked me personally, attacked my family. I could, to be honest.
Well, you're a much better person than I. That's really big of you. I don't think that after having my kids threatened or being accused of inspiring murders, I could go on and just befriend someone. I guess maybe after apologies, I don't know. After someone sincerely apologizes, these things can happen, but it's hard for me to entertain that thought right now,
Yeah, certainly at the time when it was ripe, I would have given you a different answer had we had this interview then. But, when things calm down, life is sometimes we take it too seriously, I think. I mean, look at us. We live on a speck in an ocean of planets, and we're only here for a short time, and we tend to, I guess, exaggerate our self-worth and our opinions and our place in this universe. And I think sometimes when you look at the big picture, you tend to take life not quite as seriously. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think being on social media really kind of exaggerates this. Whatever's happening to you is the worst thing in the world, and whatever issues you care about are the most important in the world. Because I guess you find a lot of instant responses, and I don't know what kind of long-term effects this could have, like Twitter-like things could have on us, this instant gratification and instant responses to things. It's strange to think about that.
And there's also, I read a good book on psychology in the internet a few years ago, and I can't remember the name of the psychologist who did the study, but they brought up this new theory called toxic disinhibition, and it's where obviously you're anonymous, or a lot of people are anonymous on Twitter and social media, and so that works as a disinhibitor for, I guess, bad behavior, for toxic behavior.
Yeah, I can see that.
Tend to be a lot more toxic because there are less consequences than when you are face to face with someone, and when you're not anonymous, when you're out there. And so I think that's certainly another factor that can alter behavior and also alter the discourse, the kind of the level of the discourse that we're having over certain subjects can be affected by this toxic disinhibition. So I think that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, but do you think that controlling people's anonymity, like how Facebook does, like a lot of ex-Muslims, including myself, have been kicked off of Facebook. I've been banned from it twice. My podcast has been banned on YouTube twice. When other people uploaded the same exact podcast to their channels, it was there without a problem. It's just me that I guess people report and target or whatever. And so Facebook has this real name policy, which they, like a lot of ex-Muslims get targeted for because they don't use their real names because it's not safe for them to use their real names.
Exactly. I think they should certainly change that policy. And I think they should stop targeting ex-Muslims, as they obviously are. That's where I will speak out against the regressive left. Mm-hmm. That's the aspect of the regressive left I'm extremely keen on targeting.
It's so weird how a lot of the liberal politicians just fall into that category, and it's so frustrating because otherwise they might be great people, but it's just this one topic they can't wrap their head around, or they don't want to deal with it. Like Obama. He's not really good on Islam.
He's horrible on Islam. He's terrible on the issue, and it saddens me that the politicians that I like the most are the worst at addressing Islam. I like Obama. I like a lot of his policies.
Me too. Yeah.
But when it comes to Islam, he's just. And again, there's obviously a balance he needs to take as a influential world leader, and as the president of a country that has a large Muslim population. He can't be out there saying, "Well, Muslims are evil" and all this stuff. Because
of course you have to be kind of.
He has to be careful, but he's so unbalanced with it that I think it can do damage to ex-Muslims and minorities in the Muslim world who are suffering in the Muslim world.
Well, Muslims too, because then they start being seen as this minority that's protected, that's given special status, that gets special privileges, and then the people who are bigoted towards us, they're angrier about it,
Yeah.
So
exactly. Yeah, and that's a lot of, I think Ali Rizvi's made that argument as well, that, a lot of the dropping of the ball on this issue by liberals has allowed right-wingers to pick it up. And the way they pick up the ball is they just throw it at anyone who looks Muslim.
Yeah.
Which is their, because they're not the brightest bunch in the world, the right wing. Let's be honest, they're not.
I'm not going to oppose you on that.
Yeah, so I think it's important that intellectuals and liberal intellectuals pick up the ball on this issue, and I think Bill Maher has been quite good at that. He stands with a lot of the right issues, in my opinion. I agree with him.
And he's actually he's very liberal when it comes to, he'll still bash like conservative Christians. He doesn't pretend America is perfect, because there is a lot of that happening. When you get people who are willing to speak about Islam, they tend to be very protective over the West, and no, there's no racism, no, there's no sexism, we don't need feminism. But Bill Maher is right on all those things.
And that's where I agree with most. Like, I guess you could call me a Bill Maher atheist. Because, and a lot of people comment, a lot of my followers will say, you're so progressive when it comes to Islam, but so regressive when it comes to race and gender. And it's like, okay, well, that's you, I guess. But
I think now it's gotten to the point where if you're not like Donald Trump, some people will call you regressive.
Yeah, but Donald Trump speaks his mind.
Yeah, except for when he didn't mean to say certain things.
Yeah, then he didn't speak his mind, but he speaks his mind. All right, that's all you need to know about Donald Trump.
That's all you need to know.
That's the meme, the Donald Trump meme.
Mm-hmm. He speaks his mind, except for when he didn't mean to say that one thing, and couldn't denounce the KKK.
And the fact that he's got a platform, a fairly significant platform in the US, I think is testimony to the fact that a large portion of the US is an idiocracy. I think. I mean, as I said, there are highly intellectual people in the US, but I think, I don't know, I don't have a lot of hope for the US. I'm not one of those atheists that are so pro-US or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But, and again, that could be my father's influence, because he was obviously a communist and he didn't like the US at all. Maybe that's my brainwashing from a child.
Michael Sherlock, Americanophobe. That's what I'm going to title this podcast episode. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to title it that. But no, I can see there are fair criticisms to be made. Absolutely. I mean, I'm North American. I'm not American, but I think people think we're similar. Do you have that impression that Canadians are just like Americans, or do you see a distinction?
I think it was, the comedian Russell Peters, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Russell Peters, I could be wrong, who was visiting New Zealand, did a show in New Zealand, and he said, I feel a kinship with you because you're a small country next to a big asshole. And I'm saying this as an Australian, so I do concede. But yeah, I see Canada as somewhat akin to New Zealand. They're the friendly nation next to the toxic one. That's the way I see it. Again, I have a lot of American friends. There's a lot of things about America I really like. But again, as Stephen Fry said, that when you like something, you want to criticize it to help it.
No, yeah, I totally get that. And I think that's really endearing about the States too, how some of their like late night comedy TV shows make a lot of fun of themselves.
Yeah.
I wish that we could have that like in Pakistani culture, for example. That would really improve us so much if we were able to mock ourselves like that.
Yeah, I met a humanist. He's a Pakistani humanist at the last conference I was at in Taiwan. And it was really hard for him to get out of Pakistan to attend the conference. And the Humanist Association got him out. And such a lovely human being. But he sends me the latest stories from Pakistan now, because he lives in Lahore. He was saying that you have a real big problem in Pakistan, especially up, in Lahore, in that region. Mm-hmm. Where Asia Bibi is being, held on.
Yeah, you've been really vocal on that too, which I really appreciate.
It's important. I mean, and this is one thing that pisses me off about people is we're so tribalistic, and this is what pisses me off about the regressive left. They're like, well, why don't you talk about problems in the West?
Yeah.
And don't worry about other countries. It's like, well, why can't we just see humanity as one group?
Exactly. Yes, like we're part of the human tribe.
Yeah, exactly. We come from different nations. We have different, divides in different areas that are mostly illusory. But why can't I be an activist and employ my principles equally across the board, regardless of whatever nation is persecuting or viciously hurting
the anti-regressive mirrors this when they do things like, tell actual critics of Islam who spend most of their time criticizing Islam, as soon as they criticize something else, but what about Islam? But what about Islam?
Yeah.
The regressive left will be like, well, but what about the West? I mean, someone actually blocked me because I didn't agree with them that Malala was shot in the head because of white supremacy.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's...
Was it... Well, sorry, I don't understand the point.
The point is that she wasn't shot in the head because of religious Islamic fundamentalism. It was somehow related to the West and white supremacy.
Who said that?
A popular Indian leftist.
Okay, that's an interesting viewpoint. Is there any support for that?
There's no support for that. Absolutely not. But, I mean, people turn everything into white supremacy being the problem, right? But when jihadis are killing other Muslims, it's not white supremacy. That's the problem.
And there's another problem as well. The way the West, many of the liberals in the West view Islam, and I think Majid Nawaz called it the bigotry of low expectations, and I think that was it was
Ayan, wasn't it?
Oh, Ayan, possibly Ayan, sorry. It may have been. But it's this, well, Muslims are the downtrodden brown people and we need to be there. It's like, okay, but, and yeah, their culture has this and we have to respect that. And it's like, isn't that bigotry? Isn't that a form of bigotry to say that, and besides the fact that you're stereotyping all Muslims as being brown and in this manner and being downtrodden, I mean, Saudi Arabia is hardly down.
Yeah.
The Malala thing, yeah, that was a stupid opinion that it's to do with white supremacy. I agree.
Yeah, it was really stupid. And then, I mean, I got so many insults for it, but that's what happens. And then on the other end, I get, it's what I call a hate sandwich, right? So sometimes I'm too Muslim that for people I'm an Islamist, and other times I'm an Islamophobe. So the Islamist Islamophobe. And then sometimes I'm an MRA, sometimes I'm a feminazi. So how can I be all those things?
Yeah, I've been accused of being all those things. Not an Islamist, but an Islamist apologist. And because I say we shouldn't collectively blame Muslims, all Muslims, for the crimes committed by Islamists. I do point out the reality that it is a minority within the entire Islamic community or the Muslim community that are jihadists and Islamists. So, of course, when I say these things, when I speak the facts as they appear to be, people obviously accuse me of being, a Muslim apologist, a regressive leftist, and so I get accused of all those kinds of things as well. It's strange.
It's lovely, and when you piss everyone off, then you're probably doing something right.
Yeah, I think if more people get pissed off, maybe they'll just wake up a little bit. I think we tend to be quite complacent as well, at least when we're not facing actual adversity. When adversity comes in the form of social media. Yeah. Hello? Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, well, I mean, the podcast gods really don't want this to happen. We've had hammering, we've had drilling, we've had lost internet connections, but we managed to get a solid hour in.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure chatting with you. We talked about all kinds of interesting stuff and things that are way too taboo to discuss amongst atheist circles. So I hope that you and I do not get too much hate after this.
Yeah, I don't really care, to be honest.
Okay, well, that's good. Send all your hate to him, not me. No. Nobody sent any hate to anybody. I was only kidding. It was lovely talking to you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I'll see you out in Twitter world.
All right, take it easy.
Oh, before I go, can we talk about you raising funds for your research, just so that we can direct people to... You're doing some research on Islamism?
Yes. When I finish my master's degree, which is in January, I'll be, beginning a very in-depth and comprehensive research project on Islamism, and I'm to help me fund that, because obviously I'm going to need a lot of time. I'm going to be spending quite a lot of money researching, going to debates, going to conferences, and so I'm trying to raise funds to get support to do that, because the university that I'm currently at won't support me in this area of research.
Because it's Islamophobic, or?
Yeah, because it's seen as this. Well, the scholars of Islam who sent me emails back said, well, what about Judaism? And they also said, well, most Muslims are peaceful. So they obviously read like the first line of the research proposal and thought it was terrible, when I think it's a very important question to address some of the core doctrines of Islam and Islamism and jihadism and the Salafism that is becoming more and more popular. So I've been shut down in academia, so I'm going to go it on my own. But
I think that's a brilliant idea. If you know the link offhand, just say it. Otherwise, I'll add a link to the podcast.
Maybe I'll send you the link.
Okay, so I'll add it in the description, and people can go there if they want to support you. I think it's a very good cause, and I think we need diverse types of people researching this, because it's always like someone that's a pro-religion person that's researching religion and writing about religion, and it's we need some other viewpoints.
We definitely do, especially within academia. I mean, I'm doing a master's in studies in religion, and all of my supervisors, my professors, are religious in some way or another.
Oh dear.
One of them isn't, and she's been very supportive, but she doesn't have the skills in Islam to help me in this area. She's more versed in Christianity and other religions, but she's been very supportive. However, most of them are either very sympathetic to the religion to the point where we can't be critical of it, or they belong to the religion, which obviously then you can't be critical of it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
and that's where the scholarly consensuses are coming from, and it's the same problem we have with, like, for example, studying Jesus mythicism. That is the hypothesis that Jesus didn't even exist. Christians will point to the scholarly consensus regarding his historical nature, but what you don't realize is that scholarly consensus all comes from Christians,
right?
Who obviously believe he was a historical person. And I'm not a mythicist. I don't say he wasn't a historical human being at the core of that legend, but we have to admit that the consensus has been coming from within the religion, and we need more secular scholarship and those who are unbiased to examine these issues.
Absolutely. I mean, we can't just ask Scientologists for their opinions on Scientology, right? So
exactly.
I don't see why we need to be happy with religious people's opinions on major religions. Power to you, Michael. Everyone should go follow you on Twitter if they're not already. I'm sure that half the people listening to this are already following you, at least, at Sherlock Michael. And thanks so much. It was super fun talking to you.
No problem, Aina. Thank you for having me.
All right, take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Polite Conversations. You can support this podcast by sharing the shit out of it, making some noise about it, or contributing via Patreon. Patreon.com/nicemangoes. No E in mangoes. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at nicemangoes. If you want to make a one-time donation instead of a monthly Patreon one, you can do so via PayPal. nicemangoes.blog@gmail.com. Remember, no E in mangoes. If you've got an interesting story and would potentially like to be a guest, you can email me there too. A special thanks to Dylan Beck for theme music, sound, and production help.